Hey guys, I wanted to show you how to use the template in case you're having difficulties with the setup of the template. You can at least be able to just use the template. So first thing we're going to do is we will pull up that template document. And I've gone ahead and I've added some students' names in there. Okay, so I've got how many students? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I have 9 students. So right here where it says total students in class, I'm going to enter a 9. Okay, which will do good for all my calculations. And just to save some time, I went ahead and I just typed in some data for the students. So I'm just going to copy the data over. Again, when you do your file, you're just going to type in whether they get it right or wrong. If they get it right, you're going to put a 1. If they get it wrong, you're going to put a blank or a 0. Okay, and so if you notice after you've entered all that, okay, you do have some calculations at the end. It's calculating for you the number that are incorrect. I'm sorry, the number that they got right, the number they got incorrect, and then it gives you an item analysis. So it tells you that question 1 was missed by 11% of your students, question 5 was missed by 22% of your students, and if they happens to be any that are missed by more than 70%, like question 29, you'll see that it's actually coded in red to symbolize, hey, this is something you may want to relook at and double check to make sure that maybe do you need to reteach something? Was it an error on the student's part? What was the reasoning for this? Okay. You also see that at the bottom it went ahead and it summed it, so it calculated the sum of all of those questions. So it tells you how many questions that the student got right. So for example, Ashley got 22 questions right, Brad got 20, Crystal is 23, Dylan is 28, and so on. Okay. As you see here, the way you do that calculation is you're going to type in sum equals sum, and then you highlight that entire column. And if you notice down here, I have the exact same scores, and so all I did is just I made equal, and then I equaled each of those cells so that I would be able to have it in the column format for a later moment. So if we're ready with that, then we're going to move into the next step, which would be actually color coding the different chapters. So what you're going to do is you'll look at your assessment, your test, your quiz, or whatever, and you're going to determine what questions correspond with which chapters. So for example, 15, 16, 21, those will all correspond with the same chapter, which is 22 for me. So you're going to go through and you're going to color code it. And so for me, I go in order by the color. So the very first chapter, I make it the darkest red. I then do the next darkest red, so 1 through 3, 4, 10, and 14. It's going to be the next color red. And then I have 6, 7, 8. The reason I'm showing you every single one of these steps, somebody who said that it was going to take them a long time to actually color code and show all this stuff, so I wanted to demonstrate to you guys that it actually doesn't take that long to actually color code it and do the calculation because of the way that I have your Excel file set up for you. So if you're thinking that the data analysis takes a while, it really doesn't take that long. It's just a matter of just sitting down, and once you kind of get used to using the Excel file, it actually goes a lot faster. So as you see, I'm pretty much getting this done really quickly because of the fact that, well, I do this all the time. And so now I've done my last section. And so if you notice number 18 isn't colored, that's because this one corresponds to a standard that isn't really one that I look at. It's a science practice. And so it's just that one question just to ensure that my students are reaching those science practices, so I did include it on their test. So after you completely fill in your column, you're now going to scroll, basically drag it over. You're going to fill whatever's in this column into the other columns. So if you notice, there's this little plus sign at the bottom. So if I click, I can actually drag over everything that's in that cell. Okay, what that does, it makes it so that all of the cells going each column have the exact same color coding in them. And as I talked about during my session, the whole point of this is so that I will be able to determine which questions correspond with which correct answer. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to pull the student data. So let's Control C this. So if I press Control, I press C, it'll highlight and basically Control copy all those. And then I'm going to do Control V. And then I'm going to press this Control, I'm going to do the values option. So that way I bring over all of the ones, but I don't bring over any of the colors. And so now I have completely color coded it all. And now I need to change those colors and make them correspond with the different chapters. So I'll do Control F and go to the Replace button. And I'm then going to go to the Options button, the Format button, and I'm going to go into the Fill button. And so I'm going to have it look for any cell that is dark red that has a 1 in it. And I'm going to replace it with a dark cell that has an A in it. Okay. Truthfully, it doesn't matter if you color code it on the way backwards, but the color coding when you're searching for the ones is important, because then it only finds the cells that have a 1 in them that are dark red. So it only replaces those specific cells. So you press the Replace All, and it's going to go through and replace. So as you see, I've replaced all of the dark red ones with a capital A. So here you can see there's an A, there's an A, and there's an A, okay? So you're going to go through the same process, but you're going to replace it with the next color. So for example, the lighter red, I'm going to replace all the ones with B's. And then I'm going to go through and replace all the oranges with C's. And then replace all the yellows with D's. Place all the greens with E's. And so after I finish this, this will actually be all of my chapters. So I have already, substituted everything over. So any color coding is all showing me which ones they correspond with. And if I scroll to the bottom, I'm going to see that I've already counted. Okay, so there's a count if option, and what it's doing is it's counting within that column how many A's that it finds. And so you can see that there's 4 questions that had correct that for A, 4 that were correct in section B, 5 that were correct in section C, 4 that were correct in D, and 4 that were correct in E. Okay, and then down here all I've done is just rotate it so that they're side by side. And so I'm going to change out the topic. So that would be chapter 22. This is going to be chapter 23. This will be chapter, I'm sorry, I have a typo. This will be chapter 24, this will be chapter 25, and then this will be chapter 26. So I've replaced it all out, and I'm going to actually delete all of the extra ones. Okay, so as you see, as I typed it over on this side, in the gray areas, it automatically has brought that information over here, and then it also has already brought that information over to my analysis screen. So the next thing I need to type in is the number. So there were 5 questions in chapter 22, 6 in 23, 6 in 24, 6 in 25, and 5 in 26. And I'm going to get rid of these extra 5s because those don't correspond with anything. Okay, and so now I've completely entered everything that I need to enter, and I've analyzed everything on my chapter page. So if I click on this multiple choice analysis page, one more thing I have to do. I have to go to the grade calc, and I need to type in how many questions there were that were multiple choice. So there were 32 that were multiple choice. Okay, so now if I go to the multiple choice analysis page, it's going to tell me how many students have met the standard. It also tells me the percent that my students got in their multiple choice as well as each of the sections. So I can kind of visibly see and say, oh wow, Eva's really got this. She has a 94% raw score on her multiple choice. She got 100% every section except for chapter 25. I could see here that this person with a no name, that of course is blank, is weak in every section. And so the yellow is symbolizing that they've met the standard. So they've received something between a 70 and an 89. The green is symbolizing that they've exceeded the standard. So that would be an A, so a 90 or higher in a section. And then the red symbolizes that they have not met the standard. So they are less than a 70 in that specific section. Okay. So the next step we need to do is our constructor response. And so I do free responses. So I have the first question's worth 10, the second question's worth 4, the third question's worth 4, and the fourth question's worth 3. Again, I already have the stuff typed up, so I'm just going to copy and paste it over, but you would manually just type these items in there. So if I copy that over and let's paste that in, and then I copy the next section over. And again, you would just type this part in. So of course it would take you a little bit longer than what is currently taking me to show you. But overall, the analysis part really doesn't take that long to do. Control save. And then we have our last section. Okay, and so here I can visibly see how each of those students did in terms of their free response. So it looks like everybody didn't do so good on that long free response, but personally, I don't really expect a student to make a 70% on a free response because those are kind of hard questions. But here you can see on the short free responses which students have met the standard and which students have exceeded the standard and which ones have not. So that gives you a lot of idea, especially as color coded. And now the last part has to do with the grade calculation, okay? And so if your test is broken up a little differently, mine is 50% multiple choice, 50% free response. If yours was 25% multiple choice and 75% free response, then you would just change it up in this top corner. So that it would just change it right here where it says 25%, 75%, okay? So let's switch it back to my 50% so we can have the correct calculation. And what it's going to do is it's going to tell you multiple choice, how the student did, as well as it's going to show you constructor response, so free response, how the student did. And then it's going to give you an overall grade, so you can see the student's overall grade. And then I've corresponded each of those grades with a letter. Okay, so you can see, you know, whether it's a C, an A, a B, a D, or whatever letter it is. And you can also see if they have met the standard or whatnot. And the last thing that I think you guys would find valuable is that it counts for you. It tells you how many of your students made A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's, as well as it's also going to do a calculation to give you the percent. So 5% of the students made A's, 5% of the students made C's, 5% of the students made D's, and then 83% of the students made F's. Keep in mind that my grades are traditionally curved, so those students did not all fail the exam, so don't worry about that. And then also over here on the achievement, you'd be able to see these calculations of how many exceeded, meet, and then do not meet. And the last thing I have for you is if you click on this graphs, it will actually graph the data for you. And it'll tell you, you know, how many students had A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's, and how many students met the standard, exceeded the standard, or does not meet the standard. And so I hope that was helpful. And please let me know if there's any questions on anything. And I hope you have a great day.